I want to talk about a change in the NYPD's marijuana enforcement policy. This policy, detailed in an operations order that will be issued tomorrow but will be effective November 19th, that will give us the opportunity to do roll call training for our field personnel to understand the intricacies of that order. This order, which will go into effect on November 19th, addresses one provision of the current New York State penal law statute pertaining to possession of marijuana in an amount up to 25 grams in open view, which is presently processed as a misdemeanor level arrest. Under the new policy, persons found to be in possession of this amount of marijuana, 25 grams or less, may be eligible to receive a summons in lieu of arrest, so summons instead of being arrested. However, I point out there are exceptions to the provisions of this new department policy. It should be made very clear that persons who are burning and or smoking marijuana in public will still be subject to arrest. This policy does not pertain, this policy does not pertain to marijuana in any amount which is being smoked or burned or being used in public. There are several other exceptions under which persons in possessions of up to 25 grams of marijuana in public view will still be subject to arrest or a misdemeanor charge. If a person is the subject of an active warrant or is wanted in connection with an active investigation, a probable cause I-card, if a person is unable to produce proper personal identification within a reasonable amount of time, they would still be transported back to the station house where they would be given the opportunity to have somebody bring in the appropriate identification. Additionally, if the amount is not consistent with personal use, by that, if it's over 25 grams, it is assumed that it is for sale, and they would be charged appropriately. We have discussed this policy with the mayor over the last number of months, and Liz Glazer, and with the courts, as well as the city's 5 district attorneys. I spoke today to all 5 of the district attorneys. We provided them several hours ago with copies of the actual order. And also the special narcotics prosecutor, although she does not usually deal with this type of drug crime. Additionally, I just met with the leaders of our 5 unions upstairs. They were all given copies of the order, and we had discussion with them relative to its provisions as it pertains to their members. A final operations order detailing this change will be disseminated starting tomorrow, and again, it will take effect on November 19th.
Commissioner, thank you again for your leadership. This is an example of another important step, both for keeping the people of New York City safe and building a closer relationship between the police and the community in this city. I think in so much of what you've done over this last 10 months, you've continued to move this department forward and to have continued to bring it closer to the communities it served. I want to thank you for that leadership. I came into office with a pledge to incessantly work to heal some of the wounds of the past and create a strong bond, an ever stronger bond between police and community. We've seen a number of changes in the last 10 months that have brought us forward. We've seen a great reduction in the number of unnecessary stops. We've seen the plan to retrain every single officer to help make them more effective and more able to work closely with the communities they serve. We've seen greater oversight with a reinforced CCRB and the new Inspector General. Today is another important step, and I'm proud to join the Commissioner in the announcement of these new guidelines that will help reduce unnecessary arrests for minor marijuana possession. Too many New Yorkers without any prior convictions have been arrested for low-level marijuana possession. Black and Latino communities have been disproportionately affected. There have been, in some cases, disastrous consequences for individuals and families. When an individual is arrested, even for the smallest possession of marijuana, it hurts their chances to get a good job, it hurts their chances to get housing, it hurts their chances to qualify for a student loan. It can literally follow them the rest of their lives and saddle young people with challenges that for many are very, very difficult to overcome. This is obviously not our intention. Our intention is to help all New Yorkers, particularly get our young people on the right track and avoid these unnecessary consequences. As you heard from the Commissioner, effective a week from this coming Wednesday on November 19th, there will be new guidelines for our police officers. And that is for situations in which a person possesses less than 25 grams of marijuana. The officer will have the opportunity to issue a summons charging a violation rather than an arrest. Now let's be clear. Safety is our top priority, and as the Commissioner said, there's been a conversation over months to make sure we could implement a smart policy that keeps New Yorkers safe, but is also a more fair policy. After lots of careful consultation and a lot of collaboration between One Police Plaza and City Hall, and as you heard, the DAs and others, we've come to a policy that makes sense. And throughout, we've made clear that officer discretion is crucial in all matters. The officer ultimately has to make the judgment on the scene. They have to decide whether there are some other telltale signs that the individual involved may be involved in much more dangerous activities. There may be red flags that point to other problems, and that will change the officer's view of how to handle the situation, and that's what we train our officers to determine. For example, if someone's smoking in close proximity to schools and playgrounds, or in possession in close proximity to schools and playgrounds, that could be a dead giveaway. If someone obviously shows any evidence of intent to sell, that's someone who gets arrested. I hasten to add, and this is a matter of, I think, public information that we have to keep emphasizing. Those who don't have ID, and this is particularly true of our young people, those who don't have ID in general, whether it's a marijuana charge or any other kind of charge, often end up being arrested simply because police cannot prove their identity and have to therefore pursue that identity. It is crucial for all New Yorkers to carry ID, particularly our young people. That is related to today's announcement, but I think it's an overall point that we really have to get across. Carrying ID is absolutely crucial at all times for a lot of reasons, but especially to help our police officers if and when someone comes into contact with a police officer. We believe in training our officers effectively and giving them the tools they need. We believe in their ability to exercise their discretion. We keep honing it all the time with better and better training. And this policy will allow officers, in the case where they do find it appropriate to give a summons, to continue on with their work and to be able to put, therefore, more time and energy into fighting more serious crime rather than get bogged down with the time and energy necessary for an unproductive arrest. I've said many times, I've said this a lot in the last few weeks, we have the finest police force in the nation. I would argue the finest police force in the world. We have the finest leader anywhere in this nation or this world in Commissioner Bratton. We are the finest because we keep working at it. And Commissioner Bratton is legendary for his desire to constantly innovate and improve, make this department better and more up-to-date at all times. Today's announcement is consistent with his desire to keep making the work of the NYPD stronger. And I want to thank him for that commitment. We share a vision that says when our police and communities grow closer together, we will fight crime even more effectively. Much more information will flow to our police officers so they can do their job even better. This is part of a long-term effort, not only to create a unity between police and community for its own sake, but to make us safer in the process. To do that, we have to keep thinking of ways to do things better. We have to keep thinking of ways to address real concerns that community residents have, and getting away from these unproductive arrests is an example of that. It's part of how we will remain the safest big city in the nation. It's part of how we will get safer still.
For purposes of the state charge, as it involves misdemeanor, there is no differentiation in terms of in the statute between possession versus the smoking or burning. So let me give you some figures as best we understand them as of this morning. As of November 10th, we have made 24,081 arrests for marijuana possession, which would include both burning charges as well as open view possession. We don't have that breakdown. That would require almost a hand count to be able to do that. That, I would point out, is a decline so far this year of 3% from last year's figure, where we made 24,828 arrests. So as to what number in terms of fewer arrests will we be making. We're just going to have to see over time as we go forward, because we've already been experiencing over the last several years a declining number of arrests in this category.
Can I just jump in, maybe, Commissioner, maybe you could point out that chart closest to us, because I think it speaks volumes on the numbers overall.
In terms of the chart there that the mayor's referencing actually shows the trending of marijuana arrests in the city, and as you can see, for the last several years, they've been trending down dramatically, and our anticipation is they will continue to trend down as a result of this new policy. Okay, sir? Specifically, if you're talking 2010, if you notice where you start getting that very precipitous drop, there was a procedure in which officers would ask people to, do you have anything in your pockets, that empty the pockets, and then they'd make an arrest for the open view, something that they had voluntarily complied with. The commissioner issued back in, I think it was 2010, 2011, a clarification that that was not to be done, that effectively that was inappropriate. That order began the decline in marijuana arrests significantly for the open view charge. Trending down over time. I understand there are other trends underway. It's not just specific to the policy. Similarly, as we've seen this year, the trending is still down by a smaller percentage, but it's down, as I just referenced as of this morning, by about another 3%. For your purposes, to give you a sense, you or the public, what 25 grams of marijuana would look like, that's about it. And so not a large amount. And the number of joints, if you will, that could be made from that amount varies significantly depending on how much they put in each joint. But that's about, 25 grams. This, for clear explanation purposes, is oregano. It is not marijuana. So that practice of asking people to empty their pockets and then arresting them for the open view is not something that the department currently practices. If the officer, in the course of a lawful search, basically finds marijuana, well, then he certainly is in a position to actually charge for that. But that practice was something that Commissioner Kelly corrected back 3-4 years ago, enforcing it. The idea here is that I have made a decision based on extensive discussion with my leadership team that this is beneficial to the department, beneficial, I think, to some citizens of this city who would be arrested other than now being summoned. Benefits to the department is I save an awful lot of arrest processing time for an offense that when it gets before the prosecutor and the judge, oftentimes nothing happens. Meantime, I'm also paying for overtime costs for an officer to be in court while that's occurring. So from a management perspective, there are great benefits. From a perspective of the concerns that have been voiced by many communities in this city, many advocates, that too many people are unnecessarily arrested, that this will reduce those arrests. However, if that individual fails to respond to the summons, a warrant will be issued and they will be arrested on that warrant for failing to appear on the summons. So what we are attempting to do is encourage appropriate behavior. No, basically what we are indicating is, there's a certain guesstimate involved, if you will, that in terms of, 25, 30 grams. But the idea is all marijuana that the officer takes into custody will be processed and analyzed. So even if the individual receives a summons because they have an identification on them, they are not wanted on the warrant, they are not on an I-card, probable cause I-card, that person will then be allowed to go on their way. The officer will take the marijuana to the station and process it under our normal procedures. So they're not going to leave with their marijuana, if you will, or we're not going to just throw it down the nearest sewer, that it will be processed in the normal manner. It's pretty straightforward. If, in fact, the marijuana is in open view and is 25 grams or less, the officer can then issue a summons. If it is more than 25 grams, they should make an arrest. There's a certain degree of discretion in a lot of what police do. I'm not going to sit here and tell you in the 30,000 incidents that they're all going to go exactly this way. There's a certain amount of discretion involved in the circumstance of each of these encounters